Hello and warm greetings. Welcome to The Analyst by Vajiram Ravi, where we would try to comprehensively analyze 7 articles in 2 different sections, along with the daily mains answer writing program. In the analysis part, we'll first have a comprehensive discussion with respect to India's micro, small, and medium enterprises, the challenges being faced by them, the government initiatives, and the way forward. Then, in the second article, we'll have a discussion with respect to the importance of the Office of the Governor and the measures needed to secure its impartiality and independence. Then, in the simplified section, we'll have a look at 5 different articles from a special perspective of UPSC Prelims 2026 along with the validation. So stay tuned. Now, before we begin this session, hearty congratulations to all of you, as after a gap of 41 years, we have an Indian astronaut, Shubhanshu Shukla, heading towards the International Space Station. Indeed, a very proud moment for all of us. Now, the very first article is with respect to India's MSMEs, small engines, big dreams. When we look at the overall construct of the Indian economy, what we find is that it is dominated by the informal sector. According to the data by International Labour Organization, what it says is that more than 90% of India's workforce, it is basically in the informal sector. Also, according to the estimates given by the Niti Aayog, it says more than 50% of India's GDP comes from the informal sector. Now, one of the most dominant players in the informal sector is the micro, small and medium enterprises. When we talk about their contribution towards the overall GDP or overall manufacturing, or let's say the industrial development, they have played a huge role with respect to the growth and development of the country. But when we look at this particular sector, it is being plagued by certain serious issues. For example, lack of affordable credit, timely credit, outdated technology. Also, what we have to understand that when we look at certain industrially advanced economies like Germany, MSMEs over there have played a very important role. So it is very important to basically give impetus to the MSMEs in India, right? In this construct, we have the Karnataka minister who has said that right now we have the MSMEs who are basically playing a very important role in basic sectors. Let's say the agriculture, agro-processing, construction, right? But they are going to play a very important role in technologically advanced sectors like the space, defense, civil aviation. So what we'll do is we'll look at the MSMEs, the importance of MSMEs, the numbers, important numbers. Then we'll talk about the challenges being faced by them, the kind of government initiatives, very important, especially from the perspective of the prelims. And then we look at the way forward which is required. It's going to be a very, very important discussion, part of GS3 Indian economy. Now, when we look at the MSMEs, micro, small and medium enterprises, what they are known as the lifeblood of the Indian economy, the backbone of Indian economy. The reason being the crucial role they play. For example, with respect to the overall industrial development, or providing the employment opportunities, or promoting inclusive growth, sustainable development. So they play a very important role. Also including promoting the entrepreneurial capacity in the country. So again, very, very important. Now, how do we classify these micro, small and medium enterprises? The classification is based upon the guidelines of the Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises. Just pay attention over here. Possibly a question in the prelims can also come. So it is a revised classification applicable from 1st of April 2025. Now, what you have to understand, the classification is based upon the investment in plant and machinery and the annual turnover. So these are the 2 parameters, the investment and the turnover. Just remember that. When we look at the micro enterprises, the limit is investment in plant and machinery or the equipment not more than 2.5 crores and annual turnover not more than 10 crores. Then small enterprises, investment in plant and machinery not more than 25 crores and annual turnover not more than 100 crores. Then we talk about the investment in the medium. So when we talk about the medium enterprises, the investment should not be more than 125 crores and annual turnover should not be more than 500 crores. That is the kind of classification being provided by the MSMEs, Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises. Now, also, just have a look towards these infographics. Very important, these infographics have been sourced from India Brand Equity Foundation, right? So very important source of data. Now, see, when we look at the MSMEs, just look at the numbers. We have almost 49% of these MSMEs in the urban clusters and almost 51% of these MSMEs in the rural areas. This speaks about the importance when we talk about the inclusive growth, because most of these MSMEs are in the rural regions. I hope that is clear. When we look at the kind of micro, small and medium enterprises, their numbers, More than 97% are micro enterprises. Then we have the medium enterprises 0.8%, and then we have the small enterprises 1.5%. So we have the least number as medium enterprises. Now, what are the key states? We have Maharashtra. Over there we have 17.74% share. Then Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat, Rajasthan. Now, what is the importance? Through these numbers, we'll try to elaborate. As I told you that right now we have almost 7 crore MSMEs in the country, providing employment opportunities to almost 12 crore people. Okay, so very, very important. Then as if I talk about the contribution towards the India's GDP, according to the data provided by the Confederation of Indian Industries, CII, their contribution is more than 30%. 30%. Then if I talk about their spread across the country, see, as I told you, that they are very much pronounced in the rural areas as well. What is the importance? That once you have these MSMEs in the rural regions, it would stop the migration from the rural to the urban areas. It would promote balanced regional development, inclusive growth, right? There would be more equitable society. So that is very, very important. Also, MSMEs foster innovation. You would say how? See, these MSMEs, what they focus on is what we call as frugal, F-R-U, frugal innovation. Now, what is frugal innovation? That kind of innovation which is very smart, yet which is affordable. You must have heard about the Mitti Cool fridge, or you must have heard about the Jaipur foot. So these are the innovations primarily done by the MSMEs in the country. Or take the example of the Tata Nano. So Nano is a product which is, it is having its full utility as a car, and also it is affordable. So this is what the frugal innovation is all about, right? So also it caters to the local needs of the people. This is what the importance of MSMEs is all about. Now, what are the challenges? Very, very important area. The very first is timely and affordable credit. Now, let's look at the traditional lenders, right? So when I'm talking about the traditional lenders, I mean to say the banks. The banks and the other institutions, the traditional lenders, they are hesitant to basically give money to these MSMEs. You would ask why? Because most of these MSMEs, they lack the credit history, or they do not have the adequate collateral. So these banks are resistant, or they're hesitant to give them money. And this leads to basically the credit crunch with these MSMEs, and therefore they're unable to invest in their overall productivity. Also, according to the data by the Reserve Bank of India, only 16% of the MSMEs in the country are able to access timely and formal credit from these institutions. Rest of them, they basically depend upon the money lenders, and they charge the exorbitant rate of interest, very high rate of interest, and then they basically go into that debt trap. Next aspect is limited access to the domestic and international market. See, why? When we talk about the productivity and the efficiency of these MSMEs, it is quite low. They are unable to compete with the larger players. Larger players have huge capital with them. So they are able to focus upon the technological upgradation, and therefore they are more efficient, more productive. But when we talk about these MSMEs, they are unable to compete. Once you will not be able to compete, obviously you will not be able to generate more of revenues. So we have the data by the CIA which says that majority of the MSMEs in India, they fail to basically compete with the larger players, right? Then we have keeping pace with the technological advancement. See, we have slowly been witnessing the arrival of Industrial Revolution 4.0. What is this? This is basically the integration of modern technologies, automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain into the overall supply chain, and that is basically increasing the efficiency. But these MSMEs don't have the adequate capital with them so that they can basically go for this technological upgradation. So ultimately it compromises their overall productivity and their overall output, right? Also, we have the data by the MSME Development Institute says that more than 42% of the MSMEs in the country, they basically find it very difficult to go for technological upgradation. Next aspect is complying with the complex regulation. Very critical aspect, also highlighted by the World Bank in its ease of doing business report. What it says is, see, we have these MSMEs. They have lack of capital with them. They do not have adequate resource. Over and above that, they are burdened with the compliance regulation, that they have to basically abide by the labor regulations, the environmental laws, the taxation laws. So it creates an additional burden on them. And this is obviously not good, right? Because see, ultimately you have these MSMEs who are having their core business activity. They're engaged in a particular activity. But if they have to divert more of their resources and time for these regulatory compliance, definitely they would not be able to enhance their productivity. So that is one of the very major concerns. Then we have the lack of skilled manpower. Very serious issue. when we are saying that these MSMEs need to compete with the larger players, they'll have to basically integrate technology. Even if they're integrating technology, they do not have the right people with them. That is, people with the demanded skill set. Also, according to the report of National Skill Development Corporation, what it says is that there is a mismatch between the kind of supply we are witnessing of these professionals and the demand of the skills which are needed. So there's a gap, and we need to fill in this particular gap. Also, when we talk about COVID-19 impact, you would say that it's a quite old story, but what you have to understand, according to the SIDBI report of 2021, more than 30% of these MSMEs, they either collapsed or they witnessed a huge form of disruption with respect to their funding, with respect to their overall productivity. So that is a very important concern. Now, what have been the government interventions to support the MSMEs? If you just look at this particular infographic, again provided by the India Brand Equity Foundation, we have certain very important institutions. When we talk about the promotion of the MSMEs, we have Khadi and Village Industries Commission, we have the Coir Board, we have National Small Industries Corporation Limited, National Institute for Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises, and then we have Mahatma Gandhi Institute for Rural Industrialization. And also we have the other schemes, we'll talk about that. Now, what have been the government interventions? The very first is Credit Guarantee Fund Trust for Micro and Small Enterprises. What is the basis of this particular fund? Or what do we mean by the credit guarantee? See, we have these traditional lenders, right? The banks. Now, as I told you in the beginning, that they are hesitant to basically give money to these MSMEs. What the government is saying is that we are going to protect you. Let's say if you have a particular borrower, an MSME, who basically borrows the money from a bank, and if it fails to repay, the government is going to basically compensate for that particular bank's loss. That is what the Credit Guarantee Fund is. And in this particular case, the loans are to be provided collateral free. That is, the MSMEs need not to give any collateral. Then we have the Pradhan Mantri Micro Units Development and Refinance Agency. Now, what we generally call as PM Mudra. Now, it is primarily providing loans in three categories. We have the Shishu, we have the Kishore, and we have Tarun, right? So, based upon the loan limits. What you have to see is over here that if we look at the data, the Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, in financial year 2025, it has basically facilitated almost 4.14 lakh crore rupees to non-corporate, non-farm MSMEs, right? Also, what you have to understand is by now it has facilitated more than 22 lakh crores with respect to these MSMEs. Disbursed this amount for these MSMEs. Next, we have the Credit Linked Capital Subsidy Scheme. The overall objective of this particular scheme is to provide technological upgradation. So it provides subsidy to the tune of almost 15% for technological upgradation of these MSMEs so that they can be more productive and more efficient. Then we have Pradhan Mantri Employment Generation Program. Very, very important. See, what we are trying to focus through this is the government is trying to promote the self-employment opportunities by giving them adequate credit. What you have to understand is in the third term of the NDA, in the first 100 days, it has already facilitated thousands of crores of rupees, and this has led to the creation of more than 26,000 enterprises in the first 100 days of the third term of the NDA, right? And till now, since the inception of the scheme, since 2008, it has facilitated the creation of more than 8.6 lakh enterprises, and it has given employment to more than 72 lakh people. Right? So this is the data you can just cite in your answers. Then we have the Entrepreneurship Skill Development Program. What is the basis of this particular scheme? See, through this particular scheme, the government is trying to give an impetus to the overall entrepreneurship development in the MSME sector by providing them the adequate credit and the training facilities. Now, why this is important is that if we have entrepreneurs, let's say we have a particular person who opens a particular enterprise. Now, it is not just increasing the earning potential of this person, but this person would also provide the livelihood opportunities to different persons, and this would again improve the overall standards of living. So that is one of the very important aspects. Then we have Udyam Portal. Through the two aspects, we have the Udyam Registration Portal and Udyam Assist Platform. What is the very objective? See, the very objective is to register these MSMEs so that they can avail the benefits of different government schemes, so that they can go onto the path of the formalization. That is very, very important. Raising and accelerating the MSME performance, RAMP scheme. Now, this scheme was basically funded by the World Bank, primarily focused upon the women-led initiatives in order to increase the productivity and the output of these MSMEs. It's a World Bank funded program. Next, we have the trades. that is trade receivables e-discounting system. What is this particular system? Let's say we have a particular enterprise E and it is providing goods and services to a large company A. Now this large company A says that I'm going to pay you after a period of 60 days. Now in this meantime, this particular enterprise requires some working capital. How would this working capital come from? So we have this particular system where you have a lot of banks and NBFCs coming on this particular platform being provided by the Reserve Bank of India, the trades platform. What they say is that this particular enterprise can submit that particular bill which A has given to this bank, and this bank would now basically say that I'm going to pay you 95% or let's say 96% of this particular amount, right? And the rest I'll keep at as a commission, and then you need not to wait for the 60 days. That is what the invoice discounting is all about. So you have these NBFCs or the banks providing the necessary working capital, charging certain fees to these MSMEs. Again, very important. Then we have the One District, One Product program, focusing upon the MSMEs specializing in a particular product. Then we have the Government e-Marketplace. See, the overall objective is to provide you, why we have provided you these schemes is because many a times in prelims we have questions which basically ask that what is this particular scheme, what is the mandate of this particular scheme. Government e-Marketplace, the government procures a lot of goods and services. So there is a kind of a reservation of almost 25% for these MSMEs on the GEM platform. That is what you have to understand. Now, also if you just look at this particular data, we have different bodies. I already told KVIC, COIR board and NSIC. Then what you have to understand, Mudra, we have already discussed. The union budget for 26 has raised the investment limits in MSMEs by 2.5 times and doubled the turnover threshold. We already read about the classification of the MSMEs. Now, you can also have a glance through these things. What should be the way forward for a healthy MSME ecosystem in the country? The very first is the financial empowerment. According to a study by the International Financial Corporation, what it says is that in the emerging economies, there is a credit gap of these enterprises almost to the tune of $1 trillion. Right, $1 trillion US dollars. So that is what you have to understand. And when we look at the Indian scenario, there is a credit gap of almost 20 to 25 lakh crores. So that is the kind of amount which these MSMEs need. So we need to expand the credit guarantee schemes, which the government is already doing, and alternate financing models. This is again quite an interesting aspect. There has to be the focus upon alternate mechanisms. For example, you must have heard about peer-to-peer lending or digital lending or the expansion of credit bureaus. What are credit bureaus? You must have heard about the CIBIL, right? So they provide the credit scores, they go into the credit history of the individual and the businesses, and therefore these MSMEs, if they have a proper credit history, they would be able to avail decent amount of loans from these banks and traditional lenders. So next aspect is fostering the market access. This is very, very important. We need to integrate the MSMEs in the evolving technological supply chains. For example, we have the e-commerce platforms. You must have heard about the Open Network Digital Commerce, ONDC, right? Which the government is planning to incorporate, where the MSMEs would be provided an equitable platform, right? So right now what we are witnessing is in the e-commerce, we have large players who are dominating the market. What we need to focus upon is integrating these MSMEs so that they can also avail the benefits of the overall development, and also it would limit their geographical restrictions, right? They would be able to supply their goods and services to different areas. Reserving a specific percentage in government procurement, we are already doing that. Bridging the skill gap, very, very important. Government and industry need to basically come on board and come up with different initiatives, right? For example, the National Skill Development Corporation, so as to make sure that this particular gap which we have between the demand and the supply of the skills, it is minimized. That is very, very important. Targeted skill development programs, also the apprenticeship programs, very, very important. Right now we are focusing, the academics, they're just focusing upon the theoretical base. What we need to focus upon is the vocational learning. That is also one of the objectives of the national education policy, right? So this must be incorporated. Next, we have simplifying the regulatory framework. Again, we need to reduce the compliance burden. For example, we are doing the Udyam portal, right? What we are trying to do is we are having a single platform where these MSMEs can register and avail different benefits. But again, with respect to the compliance regulation, with respect to the different regulatory compliances, be it the labor laws, be it the taxation, be it the environmental laws, there has to be a uniform process. Because if we have a lot of these compliances to be followed by the MSMEs, they won't be able to focus upon the core business activity. That is what you have to understand. Also, we need to implement implement a single window clearance. Again, the very objective is to provide a smooth level playing to these MSMEs. Then encouraging the innovation and technology. So what we have been saying is, if we want to compete with the large players, if we want our MSMEs to have a competitiveness, not just domestically, but also internationally, we'll have to make them technologically sound. And for that, technology has to be integrated, be it the blockchain in the overall supply chain, be it the artificial intelligence, be it the cloud computing, everything. It has to be included. Or see, again, let's just talk about automation. So that can be included, right? Grants and tax benefits for the research and development, and different initiatives like the support for the upgradation of technology must be there. Different initiatives providing the capital subsidy for the upgradation of technology must be there. So what we are seeing is that these MSMEs have played a very, very important role. They are very important for the overall inclusive growth, sustainable development, but there are certain issues, for example, the compliance burden, or let's say the inadequate credit, timely credit is not there. So we have to focus upon these areas and make sure that we have an healthy and blooming MSME sector, right? Let's have a mains practice question. So it is, the MSMEs are the backbone of the Indian economy, yet they remain structurally fragile. In this context, examine the importance of MSMEs in India's development, discuss the major challenges they face, and suggest measures to make them globally competitive. 15 marks, 250 words. Do write a particular answer in this question. And I feel really good because a lot of you have been coming to me and showing their answers. It's really good because understand, writing the answers is only way to get your name in the main list, right? So again, if you're finding the initiative good, please let us know through the likes and your comments. Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the next topic, this is with respect to decoding the governor's role in Indian polity. In the last few years, we have been witnessing the increasing frequency of confrontation, of tug of war between governor on one hand and the elected state government. There have been many instances, for example, the inordinate delay with respect to the passage of the bills, lack of timely executive action taken by the governor, or in this particular case, we have the picture of Bharat Mata, which has triggered the confrontation between the governor of Kerala and the state government. So what you have to understand is that the Constitution of India envisages the position or the office of the governor as a very dignified position. But there have been different allegations that governors many a times have acted as the agent of the center. Now, this is a very serious concern when we talk about or when we consider the federal polity we have. See, states are not dependencies upon the center. They have their own constitutional existence. But many times what we have witnessed that the governors are taking actions arbitrarily, that too on the directives of the center. And it is basically hampering the progress or hampering the development of the states. Also, we have Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who basically told something in the context of the responsibilities of the governor. What he said was that the governor under the constitution has no functions which he can discharge by himself. No functions at all. That is, he is guided by the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. That is what you have to understand. So what we will see is, we will talk about the importance of the office of governor, the constitutional provisions, what are the issues plaguing this particular office, and what have been the instances taken by different commissions and committees. Now, as I told you, that we have the office of the governor, who is basically the constitutional head of the state, and that is what which gives it a dignified position, right? The highest position in that particular state. Again, understand, primarily the office of the governor has been envisaged as a link between the state government and the union government, so as to facilitate the interaction between these two governments, right? Next aspect is, this particular office is significant when we talk about the federal structure. So you must be aware that in the very famous S.R. Bomai case, the Supreme Court declared the federal aspect or federalism as a part of the basic structure. So governor, the office of the governor, plays a very important role with respect to the facilitation of the interests of the states and also the union government. Also, what you have to understand, it's not just about the facilitation of the interests. The governor makes sure that the kind of state machinery, whatever the state is doing, it is within the overall framework of the constitution. And it is his duty to report it to the President of India. That is what you have to understand. What if I go to the origin of this particular office? You have to understand that this particular office, unlike the President of India, this is neither elected nor directly nor indirectly elected, and it is basically a central nominee. So on the basis of the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers, you have a particular person who is basically appointed as the governor in a particular state. The origin of this particular office goes back to the Government of India Act of 1935, Also, we have had the 7th Constitutional Amendment Act, which provided that a particular person can also be made a governor of one or more states. Now, there is one very important case which is related to the office of the governor, and that is Hargovind Pant case of 1979, in which the Supreme Court very clearly said that the office of the governor is not an employment under the center. So it is not an employment under the center, rather it's an independent constitutional office, not subordinate to the union. So what we have been seeing is, there have been allegations that the governors are working as per the whims and fancies, as per the directives of the center. That should not be the case ideally, right? But we have been witnessing that. We have been seeing that the office has been looked into as a kind of a subordinate to the union government. But that is not the case, which has been very clearly highlighted by the Supreme Court. Now, if we just go into the constitutional provisions, we have Part 6 of the Indian Constitution. We have Article 153, which provides that there shall be a governor for each state. 154, executive power of the state vested in the governor. 155, with respect to the appointment of the governor by the President of India. 156, governor holds office for a term of 5 years. Now, this is very, very important, but serves as per the pleasures of the President, indirectly that of the Council of Ministers. 161 talks about the powers of the governor to grant pardons, reprieves, commute sentence with respect to the offences committed against the state laws. 163, governor acts on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. Next, when we talk about the executive powers, he appoints the chief minister and other ministers based upon the majority. We have a parliamentary democracy, which is based upon that there is a party or a group of parties who secures the majority, that forms the government. Appoints the Advocate General and members of the State Public Service Commission, has the power to recommend precedence rule under Article 356. This is very important. If the governor feels that the state machinery cannot be carried according to the provisions of the Constitution, then definitely he can recommend to the President of India that please impose the precedent rule. Then legislative powers, he summons and prorogues the state legislature and can also dissolve the legislative assembly, address the state legislature at the commencement of the first session of every year, can withhold his assent. This is a very grave concern, which we witnessed in case of Tamil Nadu. Arbitrarily, the governor basically put hold on different bills. And what we saw, ultimately the Supreme Court had to intervene. And through a 2-judge bench, what it said, it imposed a particular timeline on the actions of the governors and the president. Under Article 142, the verdict was delivered for complete justice. Judicial powers can grant pardons, reprieves, respites, remissions, again for the offences committed against the state laws. Discretionary powers. Understand the overall ambit which the Constitution says of the discretionary powers of the governor is more than that of the president, right? Acts as discretion in cases like reserving the bills for the president's assent, appointment of the chief minister in a hung assembly where no party secures majority, and recommendations of present rule under Article 356. Now, these are the basic provisions. Let's look at the kind of challenges associated with the office of the governor. The very first is the appointment of governor. See, what we have to understand, governor is not a person who is elected, neither indirectly nor directly. He is basically a central nominee appointed by the president on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. Now, what we have been witnessing is that this particular position has been seen as a post-retirement position. That is, those people who have retired from active politics. Now, they are being given this particular position. This raises questions with respect to the neutrality and impartiality of those particular persons. Because what they would be doing after assuming office is that they would be doing as per the whims and fancies or the directives of the center. This is again a very serious concern. Appointed by the ruling party at the center, and again they are being removed and transferred for political reasons. If the central government feels that this particular person is not basically doing what has been said to him, or is becoming too much of impartial and independent, then definitely there have been instances where the governors have been removed. Undermines the dignity of the office. See, it is the constitutional head of the state. But if you are arbitrarily removing a particular person from the office of the governor, it undermines the very dignity of the office. That is a very serious concern. The role and powers of the governor. Governor is entrusted with various powers and roles. For example, be it with respect to the assent to the bills, or appointing the chief minister in the state, sending reports to the president with respect to the affairs of the state government, whether the affairs or whether the transactions are being carried out in accordance to the framework of the constitution or not. Exercising special responsibilities, for example, in the 5th schedule areas or the 6th schedule areas of Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, Mizoram, right? Subject to discretion. Also, what you have to understand, that this discretion of the governor, which the constitution also provides, it has led to a lot of conflicts between the elected state government and the office of the governor, right? There have been instances where governors have delayed or withheld assent to different bills, what we witnessed in Tamil Nadu. And it is for that reason that Supreme Court had to intervene and imposed a timeline under Article 142 to exercise complete justice, right? Dismiss or dissolve the state government as per the whims and fancies of the central government. Actions have been termed as arbitrary, partisan, and unconstitutional. Many of the commentators, right, they have said, political commentators, that the kind of actions which have been taken by the governor, they are not in line with the kind of the principles enshrined in the constitution itself. The accountability and the immunity of the governors. See, what we are trying to say is that the governor at the state level should ideally be like a precedence analog. Right? What precedence does at the center, the governor should ideally do. But what we see is that governor has a lot of discretionary powers, and because of that, there have been increasing instances of tug of war between the center and the states. Reason being that the governor, what he is doing is on the directives of the center, and it is leading to chaos and conflicts. Reality is that they are being basically termed as the agent of the center, and this they are primarily made to keep a check on the state government. Please understand, it is primarily the state government who are at the center of the overall socio-economic development. They bear the responsibility of implementing different policies and programs, including that of the center. But through the actions of the governor, those programs and policies, and in fact the development is being hampered. That is a very serious concern. Removal is by the pleasure of the union government, not even answerable to courts because they have the immunities which are enshrined in Article 361. Now, what reform measures can be taken? The very first is judicial interventions. Time and again, we have witnessed that judiciary has come to the rescue of the state governments. And in fact, the recent case where the two-judge bench imposed timelines on the governor reflects that particular outlook. So there has to be a continuous monitoring by the Supreme Court, and whenever the need arises, it has to take any action. The Supreme Court should continue to monitor the conduct of the governors and issue the directives which are in line with the constitutional principles, help prevent the arbitrary and partisan actions of these governors, and also upholds the federal principles. As I said, that it is a part of the basic structure enshrined by or said by the Supreme Court in the very famous S.R. Bomai case. Reform the current appointment and removal process. This is again very, very important. See, we have a particular process of election of the president, right? There's an electoral college. And also we have a particular process of impeachment, right? Which is not very simple. So what you have to understand is, why can't we have a similar process for the governor, right? That is really very important, because if you are having the whole dominance of the center with respect to the appointment of the governor, definitely there would be issues, especially when we talk about the opposition ruled states. The constitution should be amended, and it has to include a particular process of appointment and removal of the governors. The process should be more transparent and consultative. That is, whenever you are appointing a particular person, you have to consult. See, many committees and commissions have said this, that the chief minister of a particular state should be consulted. But many times what we have seen, that the CM is not consulted and the governor is appointed single-handedly by the center. The removal of the governors can also be made more difficult. Resolution of the state legislature. See, again, understand. Even if a particular person who is appointed as a governor wants to exercise his or her power independently, he can't do that. Because if he will do so, if he'll do or take any action which is not in line with the kind of directive which the center has given, definitely that person would be removed. And this kind of fear which the person would have, that he can be removed at any point of time, this would make him, or this would compel him to work as per the directives of the center. So therefore, when we are talking about the removal process, there can be this aspect where the state government passes the resolution. Until unless the state legislature passes the resolution, the governor cannot be removed, right? This would protect the governor from the undue influence of the center. Grant him a president-like status, make the governor more accountable to the state legislature through the election and the impeachment already discussed. So we can have the similar process of the removal of the governor at the state level, incorporating the learnings from the removal or the impeachment of the president. Enhance accountability and legitimacy, reduce the scope for interference. If we'll have a particular framework for the removal and appointment, understand, then it would basically remove the arbitrariness in the process. It would make sure that the person who is appointed as the governor or elected as the governor, if the election takes place, then he would basically abide by the constitutional directives, not the directives of the union, right? the election of the governor, state legislature, or by the people of the state. Make him or her impeachable. The governor can be made impeachable by the state legislature on the grounds of the violation of the constitution or misconduct. Again, the same process can be applied to the governor also. This would provide a check and balance and make sure that he does everything in order to basically increase or promote the interest of the states. The impeachment process of the president can be emulated. Now, what have been the different constitutional reforms or the committees, their recommendations? The very first is Sarkaria Commission, very, very important, of 1988. What it said was that whenever you are appointing a particular person as the governor, there has to be mandatory consultation with that of the chief minister. The chief minister of that state must be consulted. But what we have seen, many times arbitrary appointment have taken place without consultation. Next, the person who is being appointed should be a person of eminence, not a neta, right? Not a person who has retired from the active politics and now is seeking favors from the government. ठीक है भाई, I have done whatever I could do. Now give me this particular position. So that should not be the case. The person should be a person of eminence in the public life, right? And should not be removed before the completion. Act as a bridge, facilitate the interaction between the center and the state, and exercise the discretionary powers, which the constitution also talks about, sparingly and judicially. It should not be like, the exercise of the discretionary powers is as per the whims and fancies. No, they should be exercised sparingly whenever the need is, not arbitrarily. Then we had the Venkatacharya Commission of 2002. It said that the appointment of the governor should be upon the basis of a committee. There has to be a particular committee, which includes the Prime Minister, the Speaker of the Lok Sabha, the Home Minister, and the Chief Minister of that particular state. It should not be solely dependent upon the aid and advice of Council of Ministers. Should be allowed to complete their 5-year term unless they resign or are removed by the President. Central government should consult the Chief Minister, should not interfere in the day-to-day administration. This is very, very important. For even the minute things, what we have been witnessing is that the governor is infringing in the domain of the state governments. Ideally, it is the Chief Minister and the Council of Ministers who should exercise the power. But the governor has been infringing in all their domains. And they should act as a friend, philosopher, and guide so as to facilitate or promote the overall interests of the states. Punchi Commission said that we need to delete this particular phase, that is, during the pleasure of the president. This is something which has to be removed. Because if this is there, definitely the governors are not going to act impartially or independently. Rather, they would act as per the directives of the center. From the constitution, governors should be removed only by a resolution of the state legislature. Very, very important. See, the very objective of providing you these inputs is that you can basically quote them in the answers, right? Because this is a kind of a way forward which is needed. Then we have a very important case of BP Singhal versus Union of India of 2010, in which the Supreme Court held that the president can remove the governor at any time and without assigning any reason. That basically reinforced the idea of this particular thing during the pleasure of the president. But at the same time, the Supreme Court said that the removal cannot be arbitrary, capricious, or unreasonable. That is, it has to be based upon the rationality. If the governor does something which is basically against the very interest of the states, not the interest of the union, then that person should be removed, right? That is what you have to understand. So please know that we have this particular office, which is a very dignified office, but the kind of events which we have witnessed, that is the kind of interference which the governors have shown with respect to the working of the state government, it is not a good sign, especially in a kind of polity we have, in a kind of structure we have, where states are the most important player with respect to the development of the overall population, right? So this is what you have to understand. Let's have a mains practice question. The office of the governor, envisioned as a constitutional link between the center and the state, is increasingly becoming a source of friction in Indian federalism. Critically examine this statement with the help of recent examples. Suggest measures to preserve the impartiality and constitutional sanctity of the office. 15 marks, 250 words. Do write a particular answer in this question. Let's go to the next section. Coming to the simplified section, we have the first topic which talks about India joining the BRICS statement, expressing grave concern over the strikes over Iran. Let's have the gist of the article. See, India as a country has never been aligned to any of the power blocs. We have always stood for non-alignment. And it is in that context that we have, in this particular war between Iran and Israel, we exercised strategic restraint. We did not take any of the sides. Because for India, both these countries are important. When we look at Israel, it is important when we talk about the agricultural cooperation or the cooperation in technology, defense, or counter-terrorism. And when we look at Iran, it is a very important partner when we talk about the connectivity aspects towards the Central Asian countries or bypassing Pakistan. So both these countries are important. And it is for that reason that India, in the statement issued by the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, it basically distanced itself from it. But recently what we have seen is in the BRICS statement, it has basically expressed grave concerns with respect to the strikes over Iran. Now, this highlights first the stance taken by India, second, the importance of BRICS. Let's talk about it. So, we all know that the institutions of the global governance, when we talk about the World Bank or the International Monetary Fund, it is based upon the geopolitical realities of 1945, 1950. It is not based upon the geopolitical realities of the current times. And it is dominated by the Western countries. And therefore, there was a need to basically come up with our own set of rules and regulation. And therefore, we came up with the BRICS, so as to regulate or so as to carry the global governance in a more democratic manner. And that's where the importance of BRICS is, right? We'll talk about the BRICS and we'll see what are the different countries participating in BRICS, its importance in the overall economy and the other things. India has joined BRICS grouping to express the grave concern over the military strikes against Iran since June 13 and has called violation of international law and UN Charter. Prime Minister is expected to travel to Rio de Janeiro for the BRICS summit on July 5th to 6th. Maybe that is one of the reasons. This comes 10 days after India distanced itself from a statement issued by the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which condemned the military strikes carried by Israel. It is said that civilians' life must be protected and civilian infrastructure must be safeguarded in full compliance with the international humanitarian law. Guided by the principles enshrined in the UN Charter, BRICS remains committed to promoting the international peace and security, which is the mandate of the United Nations Security Council, and to fostering diplomacy and peaceful dialogue as the only sustainable path towards long-term stability in the region. In this regard, we also reaffirm the necessity of establishing a zone free of nuclear weapons, important, and other weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East in line with the international resolutions. Now, what is BRICS? It's basically the acronym for different countries. We have Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. So this was the Yekaterinburg Summit of 2009. And then we had the incorporation of South Africa in 2010. Founded in 2009, what is a very objective of BRICS? To promote peace, development, and reform the global governance, which I already told you. South Africa joined in 2010. We have new partners, new countries joining. For example, we have Iran, Saudi, Egypt, UAE, Ethiopia, Argentina, and it later declined, right? This is what you have to understand. Also, tell me the latest country which has joined BRICS. Do mention in the comment section. What are the very objectives of the BRICS? Reform the global financial and political institutions, so as to make the global governance more democratic, more participatory, right? So as to include the voice of the global south. Promote multipolarity in global governance. That is, the global governance should not be led just by the Western countries. Rather, it should be led by all the countries, right? Foster economic, scientific, technical, cultural cooperation among the member states. Counterbalance the Western-led institutions like the G7. G7 is a group of the industrialized nations. Just look at this when we compare G7 and the growing number of countries in the BRICS. Now, this is important. This is a very important infographic which shows or which tells us the importance of the BRICS. If you look at 1995, just look at the share in the global GDP of BRICS and G7. There was a huge difference. And in 2010, there was a kind of parity. And look at this particular picture. This signifies that the cumulative GDP or the share of the BRICS countries in the overall GDP has surpassed that of the G7. So this is again a good news for those people who are standing for the democratization of the global governance. Now, we have the annual BRICS Summit, rotational presidency among the members. BRICS New Development Bank, again as a counter to the World Bank, headquartered in Shanghai. KV Kamath, maybe a statement can be there in the prelims, was the first president. Funds infrastructure and sustainable development in BRICS and other emerging economies. You have to understand, not just in BRICS, but also in other countries as well. Contingent reserve arrangement. So it's a kind of an alternative to the International Monetary Fund. If any country faces the balance of payment crisis, we can have more sustainable funding from the contingency reserve arrangement. $100 billion pool for providing the liquidity during the balance of payment crisis, designed as a safety net assigned against the global financial shocks. Now again, see, this is again a very important infographic which tells you the share of the BRICS countries in different domains. When we talk about the GDP at purchasing power parity or population or oil production or goods export. So the GDP at purchasing power parity as a share of the world, it's almost 35%. When we talk about the population crossing almost 43%, then we have the oil production almost 30% and the goods exports more than 21%. So that is what you have to understand. So this tells about the importance. Population around 3.5 billion. The data is with respect to 2024. Global GDP over 32%. Land area, 26% of the world's land. Oil production, almost 43% of the global output, right? This is what you have to understand. So BRICS is a very important institution, primarily to enhance the democratic tendencies in the global governance and to make all the institutions more participatory in nature. That's what you have to understand. Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the next topic, this is with respect to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. The gist of the article is that for years we have Mr. Trump, the president of the US, shouting that the members of the NATO should increase their spending with respect to the defense aspect. And right now, we have different countries who have come on board and said that we are going to increase the spending with respect to the defense aspect of NATO. What you have to understand is the overall construct of NATO. NATO was formed in a kind of an environment, primarily to restrain or to control the expansion of communist regimes, primarily USSR, right? But later what we saw was that, the USSR disintegrated, and now the primary mandate, which is obviously indirect, is to basically restrict the expansion of Russia, right? To control the Russian aggressions, what they say as aggressions, right? So that is what, and we'll talk about what NATO is. Understand, NATO is based upon the principle of collective defense. Attack on one is an attack on all, and again, all countries would come for the rescue of that particular country. NATO leaders on Wednesday backed the big increase in the defense spending that United States President Donald Trump has demanded and restated their commitment to defend each other. NATO members have to agree to spend almost 5% of their economic output or gross domestic product. Now, this is not a small amount, and that too, most of these countries are developed countries. So just imagine 5% would be a quite good amount. On core defense and broader defense and security related investments, this is a hefty increase on the current goal of 2%, and this was approved. The 2% was approved in 2014. NATO members will now spend almost 3.5% on their GDP on core defense and spend a further 1.5% of GDP on broader defense and security related investments. For example, adapting roads, bridges, ports, and over here, the 3.5% would go into the direct defense aspects, for example, the troops and weapons. NATO members will meet the new defense spending goal by 2035. Now, how much more cash NATO members will have to spend now? This is difficult to say, as the amount will depend upon the size of their economies. NATO countries spent over 1.3 trillion US dollars on core defense in 2024. If NATO states had all spent 3.5% of the GDP on the defense last year, that would amount to almost 1.75 trillion US dollars. So what we see, that the spending of the countries on the defense aspects is increasing, which is not a good sign. Why have the NATO countries increased their spending? The primary target is Russia. Russia's continued war in Ukraine, concerns about a possible future threat from Russia, and the US pressure have led many European capitals to boost their investments in defense and plan to increase it even further. US President has said that he would basically decide to withdraw some of the troops and capabilities from Europe. Where will the money come from? So the NATO countries will decide on its own from where to find the investment. And we have the European Union, which has also give a particular path. The European Union has moved to try to make it easier for the capitals to spend on their defense. The EU is allowing the members to raise defense spending by 1.5% of GDP each year for 4 years without any disciplinary steps. So there would not be any restriction. You want to spend, you spend. There would not be any restrictions on the kind of spending you are making, right? EU ministers, the European Union ministers, also approved last month for the creation of 150 billion euro arms funding using the joint EU borrowing to give loans to European countries to joint defense projects. Again, not a good news, because what we are seeing is increasing militariness, right? Or increasing militarization across the world, which is not a good sign. Let's talk about the NATO. It was established on 4th of April 1949. Headquarters are in Brussels, Belgium. Intergovernmental Military Alliance. So we have almost 32 countries, USA, UK, France, Germany, Italy. These are different countries. Turkey is also a member. Always note that. Latest members, Finland and Sweden, joined in 2024. What is the core principle of NATO? That is the collective defense. Article 5 of the treaty basically, in very simple words, defines it. An armed attack against one or more of them in Europe or North America shall be considered an attack against them all. That is what collective defense is all about. Collective defense is the cornerstone of NATO. First and only time invoked after 9/11 terrorist attacks on the US in 2001. Not automatically military. Members can respond as they deem necessary, including non-military. It's not always like they would take military actions, including non-military actions can also be taken. For example, cyber warfare, right? Functional treaty and purpose, signed in Washington, D.C. in 1949 to deter the Soviet expansion during the Cold War, originally included 12 countries. And it is for that reason that Putin has said time and again that Soviet Union already collapsed. And right now we have the state of Russia. So what is the relevance of NATO? And it isn't primarily in that construct that you have to understand that NATO's main target is Russia. That is what you have to understand. Purpose, deter external aggressions, promote transatlantic security cooperation, uphold democratic values, rule of law, and other things. So what are the key functions? We have military defense, crisis management, for example, in situations of disasters, cooperative security, cyber defense, hybrid warfare, and these are some of the important military operations. We have the International Security Assistance Force in Afghanistan, Kosovo Force, then we have in Libya, the operations in Libya, and Iraq mission. That's what you have to understand. So NATO is again very important organization. Possibly a question can come with respect to its formation and the principle of collective defense. Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the next topic, this is with respect to a very important institution, that is the International Center for Potato. Now it is going to be established. The South Asia regional office is going to be established in Agra, and we also have a discussion with respect to the importance of potato, the production in India, and the other food related organizations around the world. The center on Wednesday decided or cleared the proposal to set up the South Asia Regional Center of the Peru-based International Potato Center in India. The CIP, South Asia Regional Center, CSARC, will come up in Agra district, and it will not only serve the farmers in potato belt states like UP, Bihar, West Bengal, but also cater to the South Asian countries. So it would cater to the broad region as well. The major objective of this investment is to increase food and nutrition security, farmers' income and job creation by improving potato and sweet potato productivity, post-harvest management and validation. Because what we see in India, especially because of the deficiency in the supply chains, we have a loss of more than 90,000 crores annually, right? Or because of the perishable nature of the food items. Because there are not enough facilities, for example, the cold storage. Sources said that the project will cost almost 171 crores, of which India will contribute 111 crores, while the remaining 60 crores will be funded by the CIP. The UP government has provided almost 10 hectares of land. UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath wrote to Agriculture Minister on January 20 and highlighted the delay in implementation of the project. A ministry delegation led by the Agriculture Secretary went to Peru, and basically after that we have the declaration by the center. India's potato sector has the potential to generate significant employment opportunities vis-a-vis production, processing, packaging, transportation, marketing, and value chain. See, understand, potato is something which is the god of all vegetables. Without potato, it adds life to the very cuisines in India, right? So therefore, when we look at potato, be it as snacks in different chips or something like that, the utility of potato is too much, and therefore we need to basically focus upon this aspect of value addition, how we can basically exploit this particular aspect and generate more revenue. This particular center will untap and explore this potential. This statement has said high-yielding, nutrient and climate-resilient varieties of potato and sweet potato developed by this center will significantly accelerate the sustainable development of potato and sweet potato sectors not only in India but also in the South Asia region. India is the world's second top producer and consumer of potato. In 2020, it saw production of almost 51.30 million tons. At the top is China, with its potato output in 2020 stood at 78.24 million tons. Now, these are important institutions. Possibly a question in the prelims can come. When we talk about the Food and Agriculture Organization, it is based in Rome, Italy. It's a UN body focused upon defeating hunger and improving the nutrition security. Publishes the state of food security and nutrition of the world. Then we have World Food Program based again in Rome and Italy. UN's Food Assistance Branch 2020, it got the Nobel Peace Prize. Largest humanitarian organization addressing hunger. World Health Organization, the headquarters are in Geneva, Switzerland, sets global food safety standards by the Codex Alimentarius. Very, very important. And this is prepared along with the consultation with the Food and Agriculture Organization. Works upon the nutrition, malnutrition, and the non-communicable diseases. Then we have the International Food Policy Research Institute based in US, Washington, D.C. Researches the food policies to reduce poverty, hunger, and malnutrition. We have the Consultative Group on International Agriculture Research, includes 15 research centers, for example, the International Rice Research Institute, ICRISAT, and the other institute which is focused upon the maize and wheat. Now, important food institutes in India, we have FSSAI, we all know that. It's a statutory body, remember. Regulatory body for the food safety, hygiene and standards. We have the National Institution of Nutrition based in Hyderabad. Under the Indian Council of Medical Research, conducts the nutrition research and dietary guidelines. Indian Council of Agriculture Research oversees the Indian Agriculture Research Institute, the Central Institute of Fisheries Technology, National Dairy Research Institute. Then we have the Central Food Technological Research Institute in Mysuru. Then we have the other important things, for example, the Codex Alimentarius Commission, joint FAO and WHO body setting the food standards. Very, very important. Possibly a question in the prelims can come. So it is a mix of both WHO and FAO coming with the food safety standards. Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, Harvest Plus, focus upon the biofortification. EAT Foundation works upon the sustainable food productions. That is what you have to understand. Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the next topic, this is with respect to National Human Rights Commission. So the NHRC has issued notice to the Delhi government over the death of a juvenile, right? Now, what we'll do is we'll talk about the importance of NHRC and the various aspects with respect to the National Human Rights Commission. The NHRC on Wednesday issued notice to the Delhi government over the alleged murder of 17-year-old boy by fellow inmates of a government-run juvenile home in North Delhi's Majnu Katila. The incident raises a serious violation of the human rights. The NHRC issued a notice to the Delhi Chief Secretary and Police Commissioner and seeking a detailed report. This tells the how you have to look at the article, right? That NHRC or this particular commission has the power to seek reports from the executive, from the government, right? Now, when we talk about the NHRC, it was established in the year 1993 as a body, as the watchdog of human rights. So it's to protect the very human rights of the individuals. It's an independent statutory body established in 1993. Under the Protection of Human Rights Act, the Commission serves as a guardian of human rights in India, overseeing the rights associated with the life, liberty, equality, and dignity of the individual. See, human rights as a construct is not just one right. It is a set of rights, which primarily includes the aspects of liberty, equality, right? That is what you have to understand. And also reflected in the international covenants like the Paris Principles on Human Rights. Composition, the NHRC is a multi-member body. It consists of the chairperson and 5 members, each bringing a wealth of experience and expertise. So understand, we have the full-time members and we have the ex-officio members. We'll talk about that. The chairperson should be either a retired Chief Justice of India or a judge of the Supreme Court. Understand, it's not just the Chief Justice of India. Rather, it also can be the retired judge of the Supreme Court. Members include the sitting or retired judge of the Supreme Court, a sitting or retired judge, Chief Justice of High Court, and 3 individuals with at least being one a woman, having knowledge or experience in the domain of human rights. Who are the ex-officio members? So we have some ex-officio members in the form of the chairperson of the National Commission for Minorities, the National Commission for Scheduled Castes, Scheduled Tribes, Women, Backward Classes, Protection of Child Rights, and Persons with Disabilities. So in total, we have 13 members. That is what you have to understand. Now, NHRC appointment. The appointment of the chairperson and the members of the NHRC is carried by the President of India based upon the recommendations of the 6-member committee. The committee is headed by the Prime Minister and includes the following members: Speaker of the Lok Sabha, Deputy Chairman of the Raj Sabha, leaders of opposition in both the houses. Understand, both the houses. Union Home Minister. So it's a very high-powered body. Additionally, the appointment of a sitting judge of a Supreme Court or a sitting Chief Justice of a High Court requires the prior consultation with the Chief Justice of India. If you have a sitting judge who has to be appointed, prior consultation of CJI is important. Tenure, the chairperson and the members of NHRC serve for a term of 3 years or until they reach the age of 70 years, whichever is earlier. They are eligible for reappointment following the completion of their term. However, once their tenure concludes, neither the chairperson nor the members are permitted to seek further employment with the centre and the state governments. What are the functions? Entrusted with variety of functions that are aimed at protecting and promoting the human rights. It can inquire into any of the violations of the human rights or negligence. Again, it also looks at this aspect of the negligence by the police officials or any other official, that they could have basically stopped that particular crime from taking place, but still they were negligent. So it can issue directives to the officials also. To intervene in any ongoing court proceedings involving allegations of human rights, to visit prisons and detention centers. We have a lot of these under trials whose human rights are basically at stake. So we have the NHRC looking and basically doing the research on these under trials. Review the constitutional and legal safeguards for the protection of human rights, analyze the factors such as acts of terrorism, study treaties and international human rights instruments and recommend effective measures for their implementation, promote and conduct research in the fields of human rights, enhance human rights literacy, support the initiatives of the non-governmental organizations working in the human rights, undertake any of the functions deemed necessary for the promotion of human rights. Again, it's a very high-powered body and it can issue directives. It is seen as the watchdog of the human rights, right? You must also read about the Paris Principles. Paris Principles, very, very important, because these are the principles which lay the foundation of having an autonomous organization with respect to the protection of the human rights. So it has certain standards to be followed. Also, there is a particular organization, Global Alliance for National Human Rights Institutions, GANRI. Do read about it. This particular organization gives accreditation two different human rights bodies around the world, right? So do read about the Paris Principles and this particular Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions. Let's go to the next topic. Coming to the last topic of today's discussion, this is with respect to the ECI net. See, the very objective of Election Commission of India is to make the electoral process more speedy, more expeditious, more transparent and more accountable. And it is for that reason that the Election Commission of India has been integrating digital technologies or platforms into the overall electoral system. That is what you have to understand. The bypolls in 4 states earlier this month saw the use of the new ECI net platform that helped in faster uploading of the voter turnout trends, publishing the index cards within 72 hours of the elections. So again, what we have to understand is, what is this index card? The index card is a non-statutory, possibly a question in the prelims can come, because see, the article won't provide you the background information. You'll have to basically search it or Google it, right? So I have taken this from the PIB. It says the index card is a non-statutory post-election statistical reporting format developed during the late 90s as a suo motu initiative. It's not binding, it's a suo motu initiative of the commission to promote the accessibility of the election-related data at the constituency level for all stakeholders, including the researchers, academia, policymakers, journalists, and the general public. The reports contain data across multiple dimensions such as candidates, electors, voter polled, voter counted, party-wise and candidate-wise vote share. So it is a kind of a database so as to enhance the overall transparency in the process, right? For all the stakeholders. Gender-based voting patterns, regional variations, performance of the political parties, reports can be accessed at the by-elections tab on this particular link. Now, what you have to understand, this is what the index report is all about. Under the new system, most data fields in the index card are auto-filled using the ECI net input. Another achievement was uploading of the voter turnout trends directly by the presiding officers on the ECI net against the earlier manual process. So it is basically making the process automated. That is what you have to understand. This enabled quick sharing of the information and increased transparency. This you can just have a look about what is ECI net, more elaborate. Single point digital platform being developed by the Election Commission of India. New user-friendly digital interface for the electors and other stakeholders. It will integrate and reorient over 40 of ECI's existing mobile and web applications. Different apps, it would basically make them on a single platform. For example, the voter helpline app, voter turnout app, C-Vigil, Suvidha, ESMS, Saksham and others. The ECI net will have an aesthetic user interface and a simplified user experience. Also, the data on the ECI net would be entered solely by the authorized ECI official so that no infringement takes place by any party, right? Any party or any candidate. The data provided through the ECI net will be strictly aligned within the legal framework of the Representation of People's Act 1950, 51, Registration of Electoral Rules 1960. Also, you can have a look. So that is the objective, to enhance the transparency and make the process more expeditious. So that's it for today's discussion. I hope you really enjoyed the discussion. Do let us know through your likes and comments. Thank you and all the very best.